All right. Well, hello and welcome once again to White Lotus of Light. And I'm getting a little light. Speaking of light, I'm getting too much light off my window there. Just not a lot I can do about it. I need to get a blackout curtain really for this room, but at least maybe I can even out the light just a bit. All right, that's a bit better. My apologies for that. I just need to get blackout curtains. All right, so got one person. Feel free to say hello in the chat, and I'll give you a shout out. And we're gonna just kind of BS here for a minute until we get at least 5 or 10 people in here, and then we'll get rolling. So I'm not sure who the one person watching is, but hello to the one viewer thus far. And we're just gonna kind of wait a second here to get some more folks having our sip of the coffee here. So today we're going to go over the following things. I'll just kind of do the bullet points. So I recently was on Tinfoil Hat, and so hey, what's up, Swarm members? If by some chance Sam Tripoli happens to be watching this, or Xavier, or Johnny Woodward, hey guys, how's it going? Thanks so much for having me on the show again. Love the Tinfoil Hat. We're going to talk about all the UFO related stuff that's been coming out through official channels and through non-official but fairly substantive channels like Dr. Stephen Greer. We're going to talk about some of the financial events that are on the horizon, and then I'm going to have a section on discernment in the truth movement and the weaponization of conspiracy theory. And so those are going to be the subjects today, and then I'm going to just answer Q&A within reason about whatever folks want. With one possible exception, which I will get to when I get to the discernment section, because I'm just kind of done with that topic. All right. So Michael says, hello, love your work and found out about you since your last Tinfoil Hat episode. Hey, Michael, how's it going, man? John O says, hi. Nice to see you, John O. I don't think I've seen you two gentlemen before. Maybe John O, but I don't think Michael. Clemo13 says, hope all is well. Thank you. Michael says, Johnny Woodward, I think, not Woodward. Oh, Woodard? Oh, okay, my bad. And then Sarah Somerville says hi. Hey, Sarah. I thought it was Woodward for some reason. Fan watching from the true Atlantis, South Florida. Oh, well. All right. That's Ramon with the funny picture of the former mayor of Chicago, Lori Gollum Lightfoot. And then I have Thamiel 616 reptilian attacked me in sleep paralysis. Okay, well, that's interesting. There are other dimensional beings that do interact with us, and that liminal state between the dream world and waking consciousness is a time when different astral beings are more likely to come to you. But that also includes angels, just that period of time before you go into sleep, when you're in that sleep paralysis stage. Sleep paralysis is also when you are able to astrally project and set up lucid dreaming. So there's a lot to that, but I'm not going to get into that to a huge degree today, Thamiel, just because, we can maybe talk about it in the second half. But anyways, Michael says face is a living meme. All right, we got 12 people, so that seems good. Just to recap for the folks who weren't here yet, today we're going to go over my Tinfoil Hat appearance just briefly. Just give a shout out to the Swarm, which it sounds like we already have some folks in here. We're going to talk about the UFO narrative. I really wanted to get to this on the Tinfoil Hat. I also realized I want to talk about angelic magic a bit, and I'm actually going to bump that up to the front end here. There's also financial events on the horizon that I want to talk about. The Fed now coming out in July. CHAPS just got switched over to ISO 222, the new crypto system, the blockchain financial system, sometimes called the quantum financial system. Very important, and in my opinion, it's the thing going on in the world right now. It's the most important thing, and kind of everything else is a distraction or a fog of war or otherwise kind of a manipulation to keep people from noticing what's going on in the financial, economic, monetary space, which is kind of all important, and it's sort of for all the marbles. So I also want to talk about discernment in the truth movement and the weaponization of conspiracy theory, and then we're going to hit on Q&A. So let me pull out my notes here, and then we will do Yeah. Oh, we're also going to talk about the Titanic. Whoops. I need to put that on the agenda here real quick. What happened to my notes here? So I want to talk about the Titanic, and that's actually related to some degree to the financial events on the horizon. So we'll do that as part of that. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. There we go. I don't know. This technical difficulties here. All right. So let's see. I'm just going to give a couple more shout outs. Scoons, Ian, I'd love to know how you discern angelics when all the new age also thinks they're channeling angels. Love your channel. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Scoons, I will cover that when I get to the angelic magic portion, which will be one of the very first things we talk about. So that's a great question. That's very timely based on what we're going to talk about. Okay. So tinfoil hat. First of all, Sammy, Johnny, and Xavier, much love, guys. I don't know if any of you will watch this, but thanks so much again for having me on the tinfoil hat. It really was kind of like the big break for the channel, and it kind of ran parallel to some other things that are going on in my life, to where like kind of everything really changed for me in 2022 after more than a year of working on angelic magic. And in fact, I got onto tinfoil hat in my estimation based on using angelic magic. And so I'm just going to actually, other than saying much love to the swarm and to all the tinfoil hat folks, although some folks may not like what I say at the very, very end of before we go into the Q&A, but that's okay. We don't all have to agree. And I think that's an important thing that we have to realize in the truth movement, is we have to be a little bit more accepting. And this includes me, because I get particularly infuriated about one particular conspiracy theory. And we have to learn how to be a little bit more accepting of each other, but we also need to really focus up on the conspiracy theories, if you will, that matter, because there's a lot out there that they kind of don't matter. And then there's others that are utterly critical to our survival. So I'll leave that aside until I get to that point 5, the discernment, the truth, and weapon ICT. So angelic magic. So I started doing rather simple Solomonic angelic magic. Oh gosh, probably in 2018 or 19, I was doing it here or there. And then in 2020, I started to do it a bit more. And then in 2021, it really took off, especially the summer of 2021. When I started interacting with the angels and the spirits, and I learned that I could channel. I don't really channel much anymore, other than I do channel the virtues, but that's just about it. That's about the only thing I channel. And I channel the virtues because they give me prophecies, and their prophecies completely changed my life, as I'm about to explain. So I started out doing Solomonic magic, just sort of asking the angels for, can you help me with this thing? Can you help me with this thing I'm working on? Can you help me with this person I know? Can you do all this stuff? And then after a while, I sort of felt uncomfortable asking these beautiful beings of light to sort of do what I wanted. And I talked to Archangel Raziel about this, and Archangel Raziel said to me that it's okay, that those angels are literally designed to respond to people's their prayers, or if you do a more formalized, ritualized form, focused form of prayer, is magic. Or you could say magic is you could say prayer is a more rudimentary, not as direct, not as tight in terms of the building of the energies and all that kind of stuff as magic. They're very similar, actually. It's just magic is far more refined and far more likely to get the result you want. So, of course, I'm not going to go into it here, but yes, there's evil, demonic magic. Obviously, the planet's run by the dark magicians. And I talk about this a lot more and go into more depth in some of my videos that are strictly on angelic magic. And I'm actually going to do an update to my main angelic magic video, Introduction to the Art. I was at a much earlier stage than I am now. I have done hundreds, if not thousands of hours of angelic magic since I filmed that video. And so I asked Raziel, I said, what about these angels doing? I feel bad. And he said, don't feel bad. That's exactly what they're meant to do. Don't feel bad at all. And I was like, well, okay, but I want to serve. How can I serve the celestial current? How can I serve the Most High? And Raziel said, now you're asking the right question. And Raziel then gave me the key to speak with the principalities. And so there's 3 spheres, angelic spheres. The lowest one, the one that's closest to us in vibration, is the angels. They're closest to us in vibration. And everyone, literally everyone on earth has access to at least the angels, right? That's how you can have a path of redemption, even if you were a very evil person. And of course, it's very important that we have a path for redemption, right? Everyone should have a chance to be redeemed. There's some people to where they probably just aren't going to be able to be redeemed, and probably it would be best for their sake if they just sort of went into their next incarnation, if you catch my drift, right? It'd probably be best for everyone involved. But the overwhelming vast majority of people, even like 99.9% of people, could get on the road to redemption. It would be long and hard, but there is a road to redemption. That's why even the darkest of dark magicians have access to the angels. Once you reach a certain level of darkness, you can no longer access the archangels. And the principalities and above are actually the opposite. They require a higher, more refined vibration in order to interact with them. And so Raziel gave me the key to summon the principalities, the messenger angels, who interact with the other spheres. So angels, archangels, and principalities are the closest angelic sphere, those three choirs. Then there's the second sphere, and that has the virtues, the powers, and the dominions, right? And those three are kind of in a middle sphere. So they're further away from us, but they're closer to us in vibration from the final sphere. So the final sphere, the first sphere, has the Ophanum. This is Ezekiel's wheel, the wheels within wheels that have eyes along them. That is exactly what they look like. And the cherubim, those are the four-faced angels that have four wings and the four fixed signs of the zodiac. And that's the cherubim. And they sometimes, fairly rarely, ride within the Ophanum, which are a vehicle and a weapon. They're kind of like Kit from Knight Rider in the 1980s. They're an intelligent, self-aware sort of angelic machine almost. The Ophanum are just very different. That's the wheels within wheels. They're just very different from any other class of angels. They're also were a weapon in ancient times, and they still are like one of the greatest weapons of the angel. They're like the Star Destroyer of angels. When they battle with lower astral, like the Ophanum just come in and are like, brr, 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 heavy bombardment, just wipe stuff out. Some people even say that the Ophanum would be triggered by the opening of the Ark of the Covenant and would come down and wipe out the enemies of the Jews, right? I haven't verified that with angels. I do know that in the Bronze Age, which is the last time they could really touch the earth, which was at the very beginning of Judaism, if not even like a little bit before, that the angels were more active in the physical realm during that period of time. The angels have told me that, and therefore they're going to become more activated here very soon when we move out of the Kali Yuga here in 2025. So then at the very, very tippy top, the closest to the throne of the Most High are the seraphim. They're the six-winged angels whose wings are covered in eyes. They appear to me as beautiful, beautiful, beautiful human beings. There's 7 of them, and they have a celestial fire that surrounds them. They're sometimes called the angels of fire or fiery angels or whatever. They're sometimes described as a serpent. That is not my experience of them at all. I've never seen that shape. They're just fiery 6-winged humans, but their wings do have eyes on them. Very, very interesting. And so I started out by working with the principalities, and then I worked my way up the angelic spheres. And what started to happen was, even to work with the principalities and even starting to work with the archangels, they started asking me to do more and more acts of charity, and they did more and more things to sort of test me and to test my ethics and morals, to help me refine my vibration, and just like to show. They wanted to test my faith all the time. Like, would I do something even if it was uncomfortable? For example, they'd say, you need to text or call this person that you haven't talked to in 6 months and tell them, the angel said, I heard you're having a hard time. Is there anything I can do to help? And I was like, do I have to say the angel's part? And they were like, yes, you do. And a lot of times that ended up with people leaving me on red on Facebook or text, and they just didn't respond. Or people would respond with, are you feeling okay, dude? Or whatever. Sometimes people were super grateful and like, thank you so much. There was always just enough of that to kind of keep me going. But there was a lot of like awkwardness and so forth. And the angels explained to me that they were testing my faith in a fairly innocuous way. And after a while, they kind of stopped testing my faith, and just like basically almost everything they say that they've told me that are future events or what have you, or things that are currently occurring, there's some huge amount of them are right. So then after a while of having me doing acts of charity and helping people out, all of a sudden, somewhere in that second sphere, right, it started to change. The magic I was doing started to change. It became much, much more focused on me and integrating my shadow, coming out of hiding, recognizing the infernal masculine and infernal feminine, like the dark masculine, dark feminine that was in me. And especially for me, the dark feminine really ran the show because of abuse I suffered at the hands of men. I was very anti-masculine on some level. And so I acted in all this kind of dark feminine stuff, passive aggressive, manipulative, just a lot of stuff that like, it was just a stage I was in, but I'm kind of ashamed of it in retrospect, but it is also like, it's important because I can help other people now to sort of see and recognize that. And so I had to integrate, I had to come completely out of hiding and really look at all my flaws. And for example, I had a like 27 or 28 year hardcore pornography addiction. And I mean, I was addicted. I tried everything to end it and I just couldn't. And then the angels helped me to end it. And that's one thing, someone, Scoons asked, and this is a great question. I'll go ahead and throw it up here. Scoons asked, how do you discern when they're angelics versus like, what if it's bad channeling? I hear this a lot, especially from Christians. Oh, like there's no way you're talking to angels. It's demons, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, well, if that's the case, then why have I like become less angry? I've become more peaceful. I've given way more money to charity than I ever have. I've been far more helpful to people. I was able to quit pornography. I was able to really cut down on this like incredible rage I had. I've had tremendous healing around my trauma. I mean, if that's demons, well, I think we're in good shape because the demons are pretty nice, as it turns out. Or, just Occam's razor, which we'll get to again later, says they're exactly who they say they are. And they've told me very wild things, which have now absolutely come true. And I mean, they were things that seemed absolutely impossible a few months ago. I kind of alluded to this, and I can't go into a lot of detail, but I now know people, and I'm sort of working with people to some degree who are working on really amazing projects around the planet. And it's exactly what the angels told me. Exactly. And I mean, I don't need people to believe me. You don't have to believe if you don't want to. I know it's true. So a very concrete example is tinfoil hat. So tinfoil hat and these projects I'm working on and rubbing shoulders with these great people who are doing these amazing projects, like that all began after I had worked my way all the way up through the Seraphim. And I worked with them on 2 different mega rituals that lasted like 44 days apiece. So over the course of like 4 or 5 months of just working with the Seraphim constantly for like, anywhere from an hour to sometimes 3 hours in a single ritual. And they then asked me to channel the virtues. And so I channeled the virtues one time and I was shown this image. They go, okay, Ian, they showed me this very elaborate symbolic vision of which I don't really remember a lot of it. But at the end, they go, pay attention to this. And they showed me this thing. And at first I thought it was, a nuclear mushroom cloud. It absolutely terrified me. And then, like about 10 days later, this guy started texting me, and I'm not going to go into full detail here. I talked about this a bit in the tinfoil hat, but this guy started texting me. I got really annoyed because he wasn't identifying himself. Shout out, by the way, Al, if you're out there. And then he goes, I want to learn angelic magic from you. And I'm like, okay. And then he sent me a picture of his magic altar. And I'm like, that's nice. And then he sent me a picture of a GIF, like an animated GIF. That was exactly what I saw. And I go, oh my God, what is that? And he said, it's the burning bush, brother, like Moses. And I go, whoa, that's what it is. And so I immediately like latched on to talking to this guy because I knew it was important. So that guy then introduced me to a group of gentlemen who one of them then introduced me to another guy who then introduced me to this other person who I did their chart. And that then linked me into these very, these people who are quite powerful people who are doing really good works across the planet. And I can't really say any more than that. I'm sorry to be mysterious, but I don't want to endanger I don't want to endanger them and their plans by going into too much detail. And they asked me not to, so I'm just going to go ahead and honor that. But I have, for me, unassailable proof that they are exactly who they say they are. I vetted them. They're some of these people are very public people in the sense of like you can go to their LinkedIn or whatever and verify they're on corporate websites or whatever. So they are who they say they are. I have zero doubt about it. And they're well underway of doing these amazing projects. So That first group of guys, though, was the first group angelic magic class I had taught. I had taught individuals several times, but I hadn't taught a group yet because I didn't want to slap together a group of people who sort of didn't know each other and teach as a group. I also wasn't sure whether I could teach as a group. Well, it turns out I could. And actually, because of the way magic works, it amplifies your magic if you do it in a group. I mean, this is why the bad guys use revelation of the method. They're trying to hijack as many minds as possible to amplify their spell. Well, it can also be used for good. And in this case, it wasn't. So one of the things I asked at the time was, I feel very compelled to sort of share what I've been able to uncover of the truth with other people and act as a sort of lighthouse in these storm-swept seas of late Kali Yuga. And I'm not saying I'm the sole arbiter of truth, you know, I'm just like offering and wanted to offer and share this. And the angels really were like, Ian, you need to teach angelic magic and you need to talk about it and you need to continue to spread this information. And they gave me a mandate and I basically do what the angels say. And it's been unbelievably positive for my life, just unbelievably positive and good. And so I just don't have any shadow of a doubt. I'm just a much better person than I was before I started doing this. And so one of the things I asked for in that class was I sure would like more exposure for this channel. I got done with the ritual, and 3 weeks later, all of a sudden, Sam Tripoli starts talking about my channel, I guess, right? So now this is like that started in November, and by December, he was talking about my channel, and then someone mentioned to me that he was talking about my channel. I didn't know who Sam was. I love Sam now, but I didn't know who he was at the time. And I was like, holy shit. And it was right around the last solstice, interestingly enough, that I watched my first Sam Tripoli. And here we are at the summer solstice. Interesting. And yeah, so that angelic magic ritual asking for more exposure to the channel, boom, totally happened. Sam Tripoli found me, and I went from like a channel of like 500 subscribers or something in November to now I have over 4,000. Of that, some huge percentage is either directly related to Sam Tripoli or indirectly. Based on, you know, just the algorithm boost of hundreds of people coming over. And once again, thank you, Swarm, for coming in, folks. I really appreciate it. And so I'm going to be teaching an angelic magic class probably starting the week after this Thursday. I'm going to offer one for Oceania and Asia, and I'm going to offer one for the U.S., probably based on East Coast time. Just because that seems to be a little bit easier. And so I am going to create a sign up, and I'll do a short video on here on this channel to let you know that the sign up's up and ready to go for anyone who's interested in learning it and moving into the angelic magic currents and beginning to, just find that it'll, in my experience, it has greatly harmonized my life. Incredible opportunities have come my way. And I'm just a much better person than I was. And you know, Yeshua said, you shall know them by their fruits. Boom. That's it. You shall know them by their fruits. It's the ultimate litmus test, because people can say whatever they want, you know, and of course spirits can as well, but the proof is in the pudding. And the angels have given me the proof in spades. So I have no doubt. So I'm going to move on to the UFO section, and then I'm going to start answering some of these other questions. Hey, Getty Up, mofo. Good to see you, buddy. Hey, Radazzi. Good to see you. Cars. Good to see you. And don't worry, Getty Up, mofo. Your question will be the first I answer when I get to the Q&A. I'm going to real quick put up my initial thing again. Boom. All right. Let me get back to my notes again. All right. So UFOs, right? Like UFOs are going nuts. You know, on my initial tinfoil hat appearance, I even thought that there was a really good chance that they might be gearing up for the old Project Blue Beam faked alien invasion. This is based on, in my opinion, that report from Iron Mountain that came out in the late 60s, early 70s. I recommend everyone read it, or at least read the big three. I'll just tell you, but look it up for yourself. It was supposedly a leaked insider document, blah, blah, blah. But it seems it was a leaked insider document where they put a narrative on it to somewhat cloak it and make it a bit fiction and a bit real. But it's pretty clear an insider leaked it. Probably someone linked to the Club of Rome would be my guess, which is kind of like the premier think tank of our buddies, the Black Nobility, it seems, right? Or it's one of them. And so they said that there were 3 ways to take over the planet, right? In order to create a peaceful planet. Ding, right? I'm sure peacefully increasing bank accounts, right? And so they said that the 3 ways that you could take over the planet were, and stop me if any of these sound familiar, a climate crisis, a pandemic, or a fake alien invasion. Because those are the only 3 truly global things that could unite all of humanity in a sort of common enemy or common issue or problem, right? In the case of a pandemic and environment, right? It's a problem rather than a group, right? Whereas with the UFOs, ooh, that's the other, right? And this is based on you could unite. Tribes would unite sometimes to resist colonizers, even if they were bitter enemies. Very often, the colonizers would be able to manipulate them to fight each other, but sometimes tribes would come together to fight colonizers because they'd realize that it was a greater threat. It was an existential threat. So all 3 of those are an existential threat. All 3 of those are global. All 3 of those have been being rolled out, and all 3 are being prepped even as we speak, right? So you have the new passports out of the WHO, right? So prepping pandemic 2.0, right? I don't think people will fall for that again. Environmental stuff, that's fallen apart, but they're clearly prepping it. And Justin Trudeau up there with his made in Cuba matches, right? With his Cuban rum, right? And then lighting it with the Cuban cigar. I love you, miss you, daddy, up there in communist heaven. Anyways, but so they're lighting those fires up there and saying, with climate change, obviously that's bullshit. And so they're prepping the climate thing. But what about the UFOs? So after that first appearance, as I'm sure most of you are aware, after that first appearance on Tinfoil Hat, all of a sudden they had that whole balloon UFO flap. Remember, they were shooting down UFOs. Oh, there's a Chinese spy balloon, blah, blah. There's all these questions that combatant commander crawled out of NORAD, General Van Herk, and he all of a sudden was giving all these press conferences, and everyone's like, he's the expert and stuff. And normally that guy's super duper hidden, but he started popping out. The Northcom commander, who's would take over in the event of certain continuity of government things would cause him to take over. All of a sudden, the guy before him, I can't remember his name, O'Shaughnessy, I think, General O'Shaughnessy, he popped out and started saying, oh, well, we might need to take over if Trump gets COVID-19 and gets sick. And nobody had ever heard of this guy before, but all of a sudden he's saying he would take over, and the mainstream media was like, oh, this guy might have to take over if COVID gets too out of hand. Well, they basically kind of like alluded to a similar thing here of, oh, this guy might have to take over if it's an alien invasion, right? They just kind of started to lay the groundwork for it. And then just as fast as it happened, gone for months. Then Dr. Stephen Greer of the Disclosure Project fame came out and he said, we're going to release a bunch of information and we're going to do it in June. And he went on a few different things. And there was some kind of UFO thing that came out around that time, which Stephen Greer was citing. But then after Stephen Greer said that, suddenly this guy comes out of NRO, National Reconnaissance Organization, some of these other very clandestine satellite-based intelligence agencies that most people haven't really even heard of, right? Everybody's heard of CIA, NSA, and stuff like that. Although for a long time, nobody knew the NSA existed, right? There's those 90s movies about the NSA where they call it no such agency, right? It used to be very, very hidden. Well, these satellite-based ones are kind of the new ultra hidden one. And there's probably even newer ones that we're unaware of, right? That are super duper duper hidden. But anyways, this guy suddenly pops out of nowhere and he has total permission from the Pentagon because of whistleblower protection, ding, right? After 80 years of it doesn't exist. Now all of a sudden whistleblowers are coming out and going, oh, well, blah, 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 but it's a threat. It's always like, it's a threat. It's an alien threat. We need to be ready for this threat, right? So that guy comes out and like he gets some amount of mainstream traction. And he says the government has vehicles even, and even ET bodies, right? So then Dr. Greer comes out, and they had a number of people come out, and those whistleblowers, one of them in particular was extremely credible. He was like a Marine, I want to say. He was wearing some weird stuff. Okay. And that was a little concerning for me. He wore a Masonic pin. That was a little concerning. Just because even though, as I often say, some of my best people I know are Masons, some Masons are naughty and up to no good for sure. Right. Masonry seems to be really mixed between especially Luciferian and Malachian, but even some Most High people, clearly, because I know some of them. It's basically a recruiting ground. It's kind of like a Division I college athletics program. And then NBA teams, the deep mystery schools, recruit from those Division I colleges, which is operative masonry, the esoteric masons. The mystery schools very often recruit from that. They recruit from Rosicrucians. They recruit from a lot of these sort of like better outer circle known groups. And then you get recruited into the actual big leagues of those different things. And exceedingly rarely, the fourth group that I don't talk about often, but I will do a show on, which is the non-dual group, which it seems is the ultimate big daddy who runs everything. They run both the evil and the good, and they guide all of human evolution. So that whistleblower also had a UN multicolor ring lapel. That worried me, that ESG thing, and I don't know what that's about. And some people say Greer is a psyops, very possible. He's been around for a long time, and he seems pretty healthy and above ground. Makes you wonder, right? But he does also seem to get really high quality, really credible whistleblowers. And this guy seemed that way, despite having these very odd symbols on his the front of his suit. And I recommend everybody go and watch that. And just, take a look for yourself. Remember, just because someone's a Mason doesn't mean they're evil. That other pin, the ESG, environmental sustainability goals, or whatever it's called, out of the Davos, that seems almost certainly bad. But as I've said in the past, there's people, the Luciferians, they have worked hand in glove with the Malachians for 6,000 years, but now they're starting to branch out, and they're doing lots of stuff to where they seem like they're on the side of the Malachians, but then they're setting up the Malachians for a fall. So, I mean, these are deep waters, guys. It's the 5-dimensional chess, all that kind of stuff. It's very challenging to discern what's actually going on, and more on discernment here in a bit. So then the next thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to actually use a little bit of visual aid for this one. Or actually, you know what? I'm not. I'm just going to read it to you guys. So this friend of mine, credit to Paul Huffson. He's a friend on Facebook. He said, the sub disaster is a cover-up of what really sank the Titanic. Well, as many of you may or may not know, the original Titanic was almost certainly sank in order to bring about the Federal Reserve. Okay? And so on the original Titanic, there were going to be 5 major wealthy people on that Titanic. John Jacob Astor IV, the richest man in New York. Benjamin Guggenheim, as in the Guggenheim Foundation, Guggenheim Museum. Isidor Straus of the Strauss family. I don't really know. They were just incredibly wealthy. And George Dunton Windine, all of whom were adamantly opposed to the Federal Reserve and very wealthy and influential. And then the 5th person was the person who owned the Titanic, and that was J.P. Morgan. J.P. Morgan not only owned the Titanic, but he bought out a very large insurance policy on the Titanic before its sinking. And at the last minute, he didn't get on. He had told those guys, oh, we'll have a week to discuss and iron out the Federal Reserve. I will allay all your concerns, and don't worry, we'll work things out, guys. And then they blew it up. They blew up the Titanic. I'm basically almost positive of it. And the thing is that most of the people who were survivors, they didn't mention iceberg, but they did mention an incredible explosion that rocked the ship before it sank. And so the hull of the Titanic was 1 inch of steel, about 26 millimeters. So that puts it in the same range as the modern icebreaker ships, whose hull range from 25 to 75 millimeters. So it's on the low end, but the point is that it would be exceedingly difficult for an iceberg to puncture that hull unless it had been at least weakened first. So it was almost certainly exploded. So, okay, yeah, so the Titanic exploded a long time ago. Who cares? And by the way, they're now starting to kind of leak out some mainstream stuff about how a coal fire explosion might have helped sink the Titanic and weaken the hull, right? Which is kind of that soft disclosure stuff, much like what's happening with UFOs, manipulative disclosure, right? Kind of acknowledging something. It's the modified limited hangout. And by the way, if you're in the truth movement, the number one thing you should learn is intelligence methods. Why? Because otherwise you're going to get duped. These people sit there all day thinking about how to trick people. And that's what people need to understand. And they're very smart. They've had decades to do it. It's literally all they do all day. They're paid very well, and they're extremely intelligent. So manipulation, psychological manipulation, and the art of lying is kind of like, this is what these people do. Yes, they gather intelligence, but the sort of the people who are not involved directly in intelligence gathering are very often in the misinformation side of things and the weaponization of conspiracy theory, which I'll get to later. But so why would this matter, right? So this happened a long time ago, and so what, Ian? What does that have to do with what's happening now? Well, the sub just went down, right? Like, it's all over the media. There's a million memes, which that's actually a red flag when there's this many memes so quickly, because the CIA has a meme department. Yep, the CIA has a meme department, folks. This is what I mean. You have to understand you're being manipulated almost all the time. And just because something goes against the mainstream does not mean it's true. More on that in a minute. So the submarine is able to go down. And the thing is, the Titanic sank in international waters. If it had sank in U.S. waters or British waters, they could just lock it down. In territorial waters, of course, that would have been a little bit too close to shore. And there would have been more prying eyes that would have seen that there was an explosion that sank it. So these people going down and to check it out, they might have seen with their own face eyes that the hull has exploded outward rather than inward, thereby showing that there was an explosion that happened on the Titanic, which would then get people asking more questions about the Federal Reserve. And this is right as they're about to do this major shift in the financial institutions. And by the way, a Rothschild, David D. Rothschild, joined the Ocean Gate Incorporated Board of Directors before this happened, right? One of the founding banking dynasties, or at least frontmen banking dynasties, because we, watchers of my channel know the Venetian Black Nobility are behind it, and the Rothschilds are just Johnny-come-latelys to a group that had been bankrupting nations 1,000 years before Mayor Amschel Rothschild, or whichever the first Rothschild appears in the Hamburg ghetto. So, I mean, come on, like, who really runs things? Like, watch my channel, watch the Venetian Black Nobility, get out of this nonsense, modified limited hangout of the Khazarian Mafia. That's just one layer, guys. You got to go deeper. So one of the things that's happened in response to this is they want to shut down all access to the Titanic because it's too dangerous or whatever. They don't want people to look at it, which is really, really, really interesting, right? So that's sort of my piece on the Titanic and UFOs. And then the last thing I want to talk about, and this might be where I make some people upset, and I just accept that, discernment in the truth movement and the weaponization of conspiracy theory. I'm going to start out with this in a more general way, and then I'm going to go to more specifics. And so what do I mean by the weaponization of conspiracy theory? Well, imagine that you're a manipulative group of people. You're sociopaths, right? All you do is lie in the pursuit of power. So surely you're going to realize that information is getting out, legitimate conspiracy theories. And for me, I started getting into conspiracy theory in the 90s in what I call the golden age of internet conspiracy theories, because almost everything I came across, with the exception of one site that just had too much data for me to track down, that was super fascinating. I wish I could find it again. It had this amazing timeline with like Men in Black and all kinds of crazy stuff. But with the exception of that website and the exception of, even now it's coming out, right? With the exception of UFOs, everything that I heard back then has been verified as true. Let me give you some examples. Injectable microchips, they have a patent. Chemtrails, right? Geoengineering, right? The founding of the Federal Reserve, right? It literally just talked about that. JFK, 9/11, right? Well, I guess 9/11 hadn't happened yet, but JFK, MK Ultra. Everybody knows about MK Ultra now. Nobody knew it was real in the 90s. Most people thought it was batshit insane and fake, and nowadays you see it on the cartoon Archer references it, right? And goes into quite a bit of detail about it. Operation Paperclip, right? Hitler and some of the high command escaping to Argentina and elsewhere in South America after the war. Hidden Nazi Antarctic sub bases. Foo Fighters, right? Just Foo Fighters were what they called UFOs during World War II. There was so many things that I read about, heard about. Oh yeah, vaccines would be used to depopulate, right? I heard all this stuff back then, and basically all of them have been proven true. And the thing is that as the internet started to go, the intelligence agencies realized we have a problem. people are getting access to information at a speed that we're having difficulty with. Whatever will we do? The answer, muddy the waters. Whenever you do an event, be sure that you front run the conspiracy theorists by coming up with lies about it to confuse people who are trying to discern the truth. So I can use a very recent example. A lot of people tried to tell me the Ohio train derailment didn't happen, that was a lie. But the thing is, I know people who live in Ohio who I trust who saw it with their own face eyes. They saw the giant plume of smoke, and they could even, some of them are close enough that they could smell toxicity in the air. Absolutely happened. It absolutely happened beyond a shadow of a doubt. But the same moment it came out, immediately out came this thing of, that's fake. It's just all lies, blah, 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 blah. And this was after weeks of the mainstream media covering it out. When the story finally broke, immediately there was a conspiracy theory saying, the Ohio train derailment never happened. Think about that for a minute, right? That one's crystal clear and obvious. What I noticed was I figured out 9/11 on 9/11. I just realized, where's the air defense? Just that simple. And I just somehow knew. And it's funny because I'm a Vedic astrologer, and 9/11/2001 happened to be when I switched from one Mahadash or major planetary period to another. And so it was like my entire life shifted spiritually and spiritual evolution on 9/11/2001. Interestingly enough, like, it's funny that such a major world event happened on that exact same day, but I just knew, and I couldn't entirely prove it. I just knew instinctively that we were being lied to. Well, I actually knew someone at the time. I was in University of Oregon, and I knew someone who had been up at the World Trade Organization riots in 1999 Seattle, which I think was another trigger event that made the elites freak out and go, oh my God, we need to do something about internet, and we need to do something about the organizing and people coming together against what? This new emerging global financial system. What's happening right now? We're about to switch over to a new financial system. It's a much bigger change than happened in 1999. Much, much bigger. Much, much more important. But when people came out in droves to deal with the World Trade Organization in 1999, there's Teamster unions, there was environmentalists, there was people of color, there was indigenous groups. All these people came out to protest against the World Trade Organization, and that really freaked the powers that be out, and I think may have accelerated the plans on 9/11. Can't prove it, just a thought I have. Point is, there was a guy I knew who was at that, and he was part of the Black Bloc anarchist group. And he was among the people who kicked in all the windows of McDonald's and stuff like that, and got all the media time, which then allowed them to clamp down, and they used tear gas, and it was insane when it happened. Like, people now would be like, oh yeah, the cops beating you up and whatever. That's not surprising. Nobody had ever seen anything like it in America at that point in time. Just a lot of people didn't know it was happening or pay attention. But it was the first time, to my knowledge, to where white people protesting en masse were beaten brutally by the cops, were gassed, right? Tear gas. They would have thick tear gas stuff swabbed in their eyes when they were handcuffed. They created free speech zones. They just were like, we're taking off the mask. And this is under Clinton. We're taking off the mask. Totalitarianism. So this guy was part of the people who were breaking all the windows, and he got interviewed by all the major media groups. That's interesting. Well, I saw this guy about 3 days after 9/11 happened, and I didn't know at this time. I was naive. I didn't know at this time to be super suspicious. I had a feeling in the back of my mind, having hung out with these anarchist guys, that there was something very, very wrong, and they were constantly trying to encourage people to do criminal acts, especially property destruction. Agent provocateur much. Yeah, agent provocateur. This guy's a Fed, no doubt about it. He told me right after 9/11, he goes, oh, those were hologram planes. What? I was like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro? And he was like, oh yeah, those are hologram planes. I didn't see that theory again for like 2 years. But I am certain, as I am about anything, that this guy is a fucking Fed. 100%. And because he was constantly trying to encourage me and others to do illegal activities that he refused to take part in. Okay? So this guy says hologram planes on 9/11. Well, I know people who were in Manhattan and saw the planes and felt the planes, felt like the, because remember the air is thick down there. One of the things that doesn't make sense about is how they did those maneuvers. A normal pilot would pass out or whatever, because going that fast at sea level is borderline impossible. Hence it was a remote control, right? All that kind of stuff. People saw and felt the planes go, right? And I knew people who had felt it and seen it. So I knew this guy was lying to me. But it's very sexy, right? Ooh, holograms. Are you the truthiest truther who ever did truth? Because I've got for you this hot, busty, single, new conspiracy theory you've never heard of. And it's so sexy and ready to rock your world, because has anybody else heard of it? No. You have the special, extra double secret new conspiracy theory. It's brand spanking new. Slaps the hood of the car, right? This bad boy is a conspiracy theory nobody ever heard. Your dick is going to grow 3 times bigger when you tell this to your conspiracy theory buddies, because nobody's heard of that one. Wow, you're so special. It totally plays upon that part of your psyche. Well, I also heard mini nukes, right? Maybe alien weaponry. Aliens were involved. It was a HARP type weapon. Right? And of course, nanothermite. The thing is, it wasn't all of those things, right? I leave it to people. At this point, I don't honestly care what the exact mechanisms were. Like, what did they use nanothermite, or was it some space-based torsion weapon? It kind of doesn't matter, right? What matters is what they did based on that, and that it was an inside job, right? Like, we don't know exactly who killed Kennedy, but we know that the CIA was heavily involved, right? So those kind of details sort of don't matter. So what they did is they put out a bunch of fake bullshit stories, because some of those are bullshit, right? That were bankrolled and had elaborate videos on YouTube's around them. And then at the same time, they did things like scrub websites that showed that all the planes had been moved to the Midwest. So they would erase real information while putting out bullshit. Okay? So those are some examples of where it's bullshit. Conspiracy theory is being weaponized. You need to be suspicious when suddenly you see the same conspiracy theory everywhere. And any conspiracy theory which originated before the 2000s, if it wasn't being discussed before the 2000s, it's not fucking real, because everything else was discussed. But there's a couple of conspiracy theories and a third one that's come along recently that are designed to attack reason and logic, and to get people to no longer trust their own senses, to no longer trust rationality and reason, to poison people against science so they can take science and put it behind a garden wall where they control it. They'll have some people who are prodigies, who are trained in science, and they want to get rid of science for us. They want to get rid of the industrial world for us. They want to get rid of possessions for us. You will own nothing and be happy and eat the bugs and be in the tank. They can't do that if people can think logically and have discernment. And so they're putting out bullshit conspiracy theories. Fake ones that if you do things like use your face eyes and goes to different parts of the planet, you will see that it is false. And I'm not going to get into it, but I will say that as an astrologer, and I'm just going to say this one little thing, and then I refuse to answer questions about it on this channel ever again, because I've had this debate literally hundreds of times with people. Flat Earth is a psyops. Oh, watch, the chat's going to explode now, because I know a bunch of people are coming from Sam Tripoli's site, and I love Sam. Sam is awesome. I don't agree with him on flat Earth even being remotely a possibility. Let me give you some examples. The sun and moon rising and setting, the stars rising and setting. If you go to the equator, the galactic plane of the Milky Way is directly overhead and goes straight. The further you move north, the more that tilts. Once you get to the poles, it has this, just look up a time-lapse video of the heavens at the poles. And it's very, very tight. It's a tight dome, and you can't really see. It's right on the edge of the horizon. You'll see the Milky Way. There's the Big Dipper in the north. There's the Southern Cross in the south, right? And plus, what's the explanation? Remember all those conspiracy theories I rattled up from the 90s? All of them make sense. Why would the CIA kill JFK? Duh, Vietnam and getting rid of silver coinage in circulation. Plus, he pissed off a bunch of people. Why would they do 9/11? Duh. All the reasons are super obvious. Get into Iraq, freaking create a police state, blah, blah. Why would they create a Federal Reserve? Duh, that's super obvious. Money. Why would they do geoengineering? Duh, that's super obvious. There's totally reasons for it. Why would they use vaccines to depopulate? Pretty obvious, right? Why would they want to put microchips in people potentially? Well, pretty obvious, and now they're just openly stating they want to do this. Literally, all those conspiracy theories in the 90s, they're instantly intuitive of why they would be lying about these things, right? Why would they lie about the fact they're using black magic at the highest levels? Why would they lie about that there's these huge pedophilia networks? Well, blackmail. Why are they lying about black magic? Because black magic is the key to them running the planet. And they don't want regular people to know that you can counterbalance that with other forms of magic. Literally every conspiracy theory I heard back then has come true. And yet nobody was talking about terrain theory back then. Nobody was. I don't want to hear it. Nobody was. No, flat Earth was considered ludicrous back then. What was talked about that might have legs is that the Earth is a tube torus, and that there might be entrances at the poles. And that would explain why they don't want us in Antarctica, as the ruins in Antarctica would also explain it. Yes, NASA lies about tons of stuff. What are they lying about? We went to the moon, folks. You know what? They had anti-grav and free energy back then. They don't want you to know that. The Nazi scientists brought over, plus our scientists, they cracked anti-gravity and free energy in the 50s. And 90%, 95% of the UFOs we see, those are humans flying them around. They want to hide that shit. They don't want people to know. They don't want people to know there's ruins on the moon. They don't want people to know there's ruins on Mars, because they don't want people to know about extraterrestrials and our genetic spacefaring cousins, call them the Anunnaki or whatever you want, of which we're almost certainly a hybrid of primates and some Homo sapiens interstellar. They want to hide what's on the moon. They want to hide what's on Mars. And they want to hide that they have this advanced technology. So they put in, this is actually the first example of a fake conspiracy theory. On the one hand, or one of the early ones, they say, oh, we made it to the moon. It's fine. It's just like we said, Nixon called on a rotary phone. Bullshit. Right? And how did you get through the Van Allen belts? Well, it creates a field around it that keeps that radiation out when they turn on these anti-grav machines. That's the answer to how they get past the Van Allen belts. And you can actually see it when you see those little pods go boop off the moon and the way they move. Yeah, a lot of moon landings faked in a studio, blah, 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 whatever. But what they really don't want people to know about is the ruins on the dark side. They don't want people to know about the ruins on Mars. They don't want to know that we are now going to Mars and have been for quite some time, for at least a decade, according to Lauren Eisenhower and others, right? The great-granddaughter of Dwight D. Eisenhower, who I've been lucky enough to have on the show. So you got to use discernment, and you got to ask yourself questions, and you got to use your face size. You can do an experiment. If you have a big enough body of water and you have a friend far enough across, you can do an experiment that shows curvature. Occam's razor, folks. Occam's razor says the simplest explanation that accounts for all facts that's often forgotten. The accounts for all facts things is often forgotten. And it's shortened to the simplest explanation explains everything. It's not true. It's not true. It's the simplest explanation that accounts for all the facts. And the simplest explanation that accounts for all the facts is almost always right. So an example of this is if you hear hoofbeats behind you, it's a horse. But if you're in the Serengeti in Africa, it's probably a zebra. You got to account for all the facts. So look, bless you. If you like flat Earth, believe it all you want. I absolutely don't. I have been able to observe by moving on the latitudes the difference in the heavens. I know right now it's dark in Australia, and if I do a Zoom call with my Australian friend, it'll be dark. And there's just a bunch of things that prove that that is false to me. And it's a psyops to discredit the truth movement. Just like hologram planes was designed to discredit the 9/11 truth movement, right? Just like, there's others examples of this, but they very often put out two stories. I don't necessarily agree with this. I'm not sure what happened at Roswell, but Dr. Joseph Farrell puts out that they put out the fake story of weather balloon for the normie idiots. And then they put out the sexier UFO alien story for regular folks. And now, mind you, I'm open to that. It was aliens. But he says that actually a third thing is more likely, and that is that it was Nazi technology, that it was the Nazi International. And at that point in time, they were operating outside of Mexico, and that they were flying over our nuclear sites and taking photos because the Nazi International, right, Hitler and all the high command who escaped, they wanted to see what we were up to. And White Sands is right next door to Roswell. Was an alien? Maybe. I'm just trying to show that that's how that one way that dynamic can play out. That one I'm not 100% on. What I am 100% on is that the Earth is some kind of spheroid, and just don't bother. Do not bother. And I am not answering even one flat Earth question or comment on this channel. Look, I don't care what you believe, but I am very tired of hearing about this and people trying to proselytize me about it. And so with all due respect and love, believe what you want. And that's great. But discernment is key. Discernment is key. Conspiracy theories are being weaponized against us. When an event happens and there's instantly a complicated conspiracy theory, one of two things is happening. Perhaps the Luciferians are releasing information to help their agenda of taking down the Malachians, and they're releasing good information. So it's from an intelligence source that's leaked, that's accurate, that does happen. But just be leery that you don't latch on to the first impulse hot conspiracy theory that happens right when a major event happens, because there's a pretty good chance that the CIA front run you and put out a very alluring and sexy conspiracy theory that distracts from what they actually did. And it's like a ninja throwing a smoke bomb down on the ground, so you can't see what's happening in the fog of war. All right, now let's get into it. First up, giddy up, mofo. One of my Aussie friends. I think it's nighttime in Australia. He can perhaps prove me wrong. So, I haven't checked in with that. They said that, there would be financial stuff happening. The beginning of the financial meltdown would happen now. It's 7 days away. I'm starting to think that maybe it just laid the groundwork for the crash that's coming, because none of the problems that were revealed in 2008, let alone this year, have been resolved at all. So I haven't asked them that specific question like recently. I don't know whether it's going to be a big financial crash. What they said is when the financial stuff starts happening, it's a temporal marker that you're in a place in time where events are going to start unfolding super rapidly and super chaotically. That does seem to be happening, right? And I think that it's only going to accelerate from here. And I think 2024 is when it's going to go absolutely batshit insane, because not only is there the U.S. presidential election, but the ISO 222 messaging system, which replaces SWIFT, the so-called quantum financial system, that goes live January 1st, 2025, 3 months before the end of Kali Yuga. How interesting. And it's one of the vectors of attack, I think, for the Luciferians and the Malachians. So they said that there would be big financial stuff happening and banks failing and financial crash. And that did basically happen starting in March. I thought that there would be a bigger, more splashy collapse, and that may or may not happen, but that's not actually what they said. What they said was the big financial events would be a temporal marker, a marker in time, meaning you're now in a period of time where massive events are unfolding super rapidly. And I don't think I represented that well, and I had to go back and actually check my notes, check a recording, and what they actually said is it's a temporal marker when that starts happening, and that was in March. And I will note that my life has changed unbelievably since that period of time, hence the rubbing shoulders with people who moved trillions of dollars, did in the past move trillions of dollars of money, just very powerful people doing awesome things. My life has just changed dramatically. Some of it I can't get into yet, but I will reveal at some point in the future what I can. All right, let's see. What did Ridze say? Is your method of contact continuous or varied? Do they speak through you with writing or voice, or do you hear their words, or do you see images of what you're seeing? Great question. He's talking about angelic magic here. My method of contact is varied. It's they sometimes come to me and just tell me a message telepathically, but usually I would say about 90% of the time or 95% of the time, it's when I do a ritual to summon them, or at least I do an informal communing with them. Nowadays, my connection to them is extremely powerful. The seraphim anointed me with this golden mark on my third eye. And ever since then, I can't really hear lower astral spirits anymore, which I'm very grateful for that. And I can hear the angels much, much better. And that, like, I can just pick up the phone, so to speak. Like, I have the angels direct hotline now. If I really want to, I can even have the seraphim come very quickly. I'm not going to like show that off for people here. I did that one time for someone. I'm not going to do it again. I just don't think it's respectful of their time. Also, I don't think it's appropriate because of sometimes personal information can come through. So folks, don't bother asking me to do that. If you want to set up a session with me to do that with you, no problem. I can do that. If you want me to teach you angelic magic, I'd love to. But I'm not just going to, put up a little, what were those peanuts, Peanuts little a lemonade stand for 25 cents or whatever. Oh, I just remembered a kid drove by his lemonade stand. I hope he's out again. I got to give him money. Anyways, I hear their voice, right? Telepathically. It sounds similar to my voice, but sometimes some of them have a very distinct kind of sound. But the main thing is the vibration, the energy, the authority with which this comes, the fact that this thought or words feels distinctly outside of my skull. The vibration, the peacefulness that I feel when I interact with it, the authority that I feel from it. And then as far as images go, the visualization aspect is absolutely the cornerstone of working with the higher order angels. If you cannot telepathically connect with the angels and hear them, which I have had some students now who can and others who cannot, it's just an inborn talent thing, although I think it can be developed. Mine has developed greatly. It went from barely being able to hear them initially to now I can hear them extremely clearly. But images and visualization is a big part of that process I talked about with the higher order angels, where I started to confront my own shadow and start to integrate and heal my trauma, break my addiction to pornography. All that real breakthrough stuff I did with the angels was very intensely visually symbolic sort of journey into my own inner psyche, where the angels were helping me to unravel things, increase my vibration, and sort of heal from some things. Hopefully that answered your questions, Ridazai. And remember, anyone who does a super chat or super sticker, their question will absolutely be answered. I do have to go in about 40 minutes, so I will get to the ones I can and in order, unless is there anyone who did a thing. Also, I'm going to answer David M. Taylor because he's also, if you're a Patreon, I'll answer yours first. Is there any specific type of porn that is most spiritually harmful? Yeah. Any hardcore pornography is. The angels are much more like Old Testament values than they are like Christian values. They're much more akin to Sumerian or early Judaism values in terms of their morality and ethics than they are modern Christianity. That was one of the things that absolutely shocked me about it. I was raised Catholic and I was astonished some of their attitudes about they're pretty pro-sex, but it's very much about consent, and it's very much about for a male point of view, the woman has to, quote, want your seed, right? So no coercion, no whatever. And so women who are being paid for sex, whether it's pornography or prostitution or strippers, right? Anything in that kind of wheelhouse, that is, they don't actually want your seed. They don't actually wish to bear you a child. And so it's corrupted and it's negative. And pornography is very often, there's a very dark energy to it. There's a lot of often dark occultism embedded. I mean, look at some of the names of these porn companies. Evil Angel, right? It doesn't get any more clear than that. Some of them are very obvious. A lot of them use occult iconography in their sort of when it's like a production company or whatever. There's one that uses the trident. I can't remember who that is. I was extremely addicted to porn, so unfortunately I know it very, very well. But yeah, hardcore pornography of any kind is very harmful. The problem with softcore pornography is that it it's almost impossible to find softcore pornography that doesn't have little banners on the side of hardcore pornography or whatever. And it's spiritually harmful to even view it. Look, I'm not trying to shame anyone who's a pornography addict. Shame isn't how you get out of it. Believe me, if shame is how you got out of it, I would have never become addicted because I felt a lot of shame right away. And I felt tons of self-disgust and shame and self-hatred over the years, and none of that worked. Me being honest about my dark side was what finally broke it. So hopefully that answers your question. Ramon, seems like secret government tech we may see as World War III gets started. They need us to assume it's aliens because the Malakians want the power for weaponry, but not free energy for the masses. Yeah, I mean, that's basically correct. They don't want free energy or anti-grav to get out. I actually am a proponent of keeping a lot of this tech super hidden and super controlled. I think the danger of weaponizing free energy is high. If you have a free energy source, then you can make a directed energy weapon, perhaps, even in your garage, if you had access to unlimited energy device and you could get it out of the box safely and mess with it. So even free energy, I think we have to be careful in how we roll that out. Anti-gravity seems to have a reality warping effect to it. Oh, shit. I forgot to say this earlier in the UFO section. That Marine that had the weird symbols and stuff on him, he said that he had seen an octagonal UFO where human trafficking was occurring. And a friend of mine who is ex-special forces, I'll just leave it at that, or special operations, he said to me that he found that to be extremely credible because of there was things that the military guy said that as a fellow military person just were like, checked all the boxes of an accurate report. And it was reported in a very military type way. And he pointed out that if you can move 30,000 miles per hour, that you can do a human trafficking in one part of the globe to the other, and you can move thousands of people in the space of a few hours, which you could never do if you were doing it through traditional human trafficking means. Because I thought that was odd, and I thought that meant maybe ETs were involved, which it still could be, or something off planet where they wanted to take these people off planet. But he pointed out to me that I think it's near where the Hmong people are. I'm not sure, but there's a very special genetic group that only exists in that part of Southeast Asia and also some part of Russia. And that it seemed to be genetic related, which could be, my labs, military labs, or could be ETs, hard to say. But he found that to be particularly credible. Again, weird that guy was wearing the symbols on his lapel and so forth that he was wearing. But the number one thing that I'm absolutely opposed to ever being let out, and I think it would be best if we somehow collectively could forget it, is torsion weaponry. Torsion weaponry is probably what blew up the planet that was between Mars and Jupiter and caused that gigantic scar, the Valinus Marinaris, or however you say it, on the outer facing side of Mars. That gigantic scar that clearly is not water related. It's some kind of exogenous event, some massive object hit into Mars and dug a furrow in it and maybe bounced off, or it's a mark from some sort of torsion energy weapon. A lot of people say that's what that Sumerian text where Marduk vibrates his wind. He sends a wind of vibration at Tiamat, and it causes Tiamat to explode. People are saying Tiamat was another planet that we had here in our galaxy in our solar system in ancient times. So, yeah. What does this one say? Lusitania. Yeah, the Lusitania is another time false flag. We were trying to smuggle weapons over, and then we blamed the Germans for sinking it, which is, I guess, true. But the Germans were like, well, we're not going to let you bring all those munitions over. So that's not a civilian ship. You just put munitions in a civilian ship. Shades of what happens with not going to get into who's on the right or wrong, but Hamas does that, and other groups do that using human shields, right? Of using civilians to guard a military installation. So that seems to be the case. So David, all right, Big Daddy David, your visit with Sam and his show this past week was fantastic. You killed it on all fronts, especially the comment about the corpulent head of the BI. Yeah, Augustine Carson's. He ended up being the head of the BIS. Actually, a lot of people don't know this, but they had a cage match between a number of bankers that they all went into this ironclad dome, and they fought each other. And Augustin Carson's emerged because he was able to unhinge his jaw and actually just swallow all the other bankers. Yeah, this is what God invented fat shaming for, is to shame people who are evil, corpulent bastards like him. Thank you, David, and thank you for your patronage and for getting charts from me. I might as well tell folks, I'm soon going to be doing charts for, I'll just say high-level people, basically exclusively. So if you want a chart from me, I'm shutting them down mid-July, and I don't believe I'm going to open them back up to the public, most likely. David's wife got for his wife a chart. Hopefully that's okay, David. You've said that publicly before, so hopefully that's okay. So Shanjek says feds will do anything for job security. Anything, yeah, for real. P. Scott, I'm with you. Probably my comments on FE. Thank you, P. Scott. Ramon, spot on. Ian, almost all new conspiracy theories are psyops themselves. The elite's ways of mudding the truth with obvious bullshit. Absolutely. Ding, ding, ding. Do I have a hat handy? Well, this is a Joseph Farrell level doff of the cap for you. Absolutely correct. You think space is fake and gay? Well, it could be gay, but I'm pretty sure it's not fake. Like Spike. I'm not sure what that was referring to. These weird stuff happening with the moon in the southern hemisphere. We see the moon pretty much day and night. Well, I mean, you know, if the moon's dark, you're not going to see it day or night. If the moon's closer to full, you can see it rise in the day. I mean, that's been that way my whole life. But maybe you're referring to something. Maybe I'm misunderstanding you there. LGBTQFE. If I'm reading that correctly, that's hilarious. But I don't want to shit on people who have different beliefs. The belief itself I will shit on, but not the people who believe it. Like, look, it's $1 billion psyops, just like the pandemic. We have to have some compassion for people. And I am definitely guilty of being an asshole about flat Earth. And I'm sorry for that. It's not that I'm mad at people who believe in flat Earth. It's that I'm worried about the truth movement just never getting any traction because we spend too much time bickering and infighting about things like flat Earth and terrain theory and fake nukes, all of which are bullshit, none of which I ever heard before like the 2010s, which was around the time the Rockefeller Lockstep document talking about the pandemic came out. And I believe these were all rolled out simultaneously. People will claim that because the AIDS virus or the HIV virus doesn't cause AIDS, that therefore viruses aren't dangerous, and that they were talking about terrain theory back then. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. I was in conspiracy theories deep in the 90s. Deep, boys. Deep. There was no fucking way that people were talking about terrain theory in the 90s and before. I would have seen it. I fucking promise. It's something that started to happen right around the time that Rockefeller document came out, when they were prepping the narratives, right around the time when Flat Earth came out, to discredit reason and to discredit authority, right? They take people who are reflexively against authority and they give them a sexy theory, and, you know, the combination of wanting to be the most informed, right, which I understand, and wanting to say fuck you to authorities. I don't believe anything you say because you've lied to me about so much. Right? It's just so easy to get sucked in by these fake conspiracy theories. So anyways, Mahalio Phialethes, man, I am so sorry. I'm positive I butchered that name. Mahilo, maybe. I'll just go with that. Hopefully that's correct. I apologize if I'm butchering your name. Hi, I'm new to your content. I want to know, did the angel say something about the fall of the euro currency anytime soon? What would be the consequence? Thanks for your work. Well, the angels haven't told me about the fall of the euro yet. That said, all current currencies are going to fall. At a minimum, they're going to be replaced with a digital equivalent. Probably initially a CDBC that I believe will fail fairly quickly. I believe CDBCs will be rolled out. I believe people will rebel against them in various ways, and I believe they will fail. And I believe that people will instead end up using XRP, XOM, and other digital assets in order to move value around the planet. In particular, I'm of the opinion that XRP and XOM are Luciferian projects, knowing Luciferians, right? The X, you know, if you look at before in one of my Luciferians versus Malachians, I revealed the X steganography matching up with Lucifer's sigil. and that the X kind of marks the spot, if you will, of Luciferians. And I think that's been true for a long, long time, including on like pirate documents and so forth. The pirates were very Luciferian. They had constitutions prior to the Constitution of the United States. There's lots of weird stuff about ancient seafaring stuff and pirates and all that stuff. That is the deepest of deep rabbit holes if you get into that, like Admiralty law and all that stuff. I'm still untangling that. I'm looking for an expert on Admiralty law to be able to explain it effectively on my show. So Giddy Up Mofo says 5 a.m. Not sure. That was probably a real-time comment, and I don't know what that means. Giddy Up Mofo, Titanic, a new financial system seems to be a ritual. I agree. Some people have said it's 6 years, 66 days. Not sure about the 6 years, 66 days after they announced that they'd be going down to the Titanic is when this disaster happened. Just everything about it screams of psyops to me, and the way it's taking up all the airwaves is kind of the biggest one. James Cameron, who's a complete sellout piece of shit. I hate testosterone. Hey, bro, didn't you make Aliens and the Terminator movies? I feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger has just a wee dram of testosterone in him. So, you asshole, you make money off testosterone for decades, and then you're like, testosterone's bad because Davos told me. Yeah, fuck James Cameron. So I bet the sub-disaster spawned treaties similar to Antarctica. No peaking. Interesting. Shanjek, Federal Reserve, CYA, wouldn't want to find the hull burst out instead of buckled in. Boom, exactly. Hardcore porn addict. Yeah, I was, Lenny. I'm not sure if you're saying that you struggle with that as well. It's God, it's so insidious. It's just so insidious. And it just, another thing I will tell you guys who are addicted to porn is if you quit porn, women will react to you differently, and they'll be way more interested in, as the angels say, wanting your seed. Women can sense it. It creates a vibration in our field, and women can sense it. It also puts you in the cuckold position, perhaps literally if you have that weird cuckold porn fixation. But it puts you in the position of, when you think about it historically, when would you observe men having sex with women? Basically, the only time you would observe men having sex with women is maybe like in elite Roman orgies or whatever, which again, weird magic and power dynamic there. But historically, for the vast majority of time, the epigenetic memory of watching other men have sex with women that aren't you would be conquering soldiers raping your women. Just let that sink in for a minute. We all have epigenetic memories of some ancestor at some point in time who watched, as a male or perhaps as a woman, the women being raped by the occupying, invading soldiers. And that's really what porn taps into. It's film prostitution any way you slice it. And this isn't to shame men and women who have been forced into positions of sex work. I'm very fortunate that I didn't somehow get into that. I, for a period of time, really wanted to be a porn star, and I actually have the equipment to do that. But I found out you'd have to be in gay porn to be in straight porn. And I was like, oh, never mind. That's why there's so few male porn actors, because it's very controlled. And it's controlled by the mafia and the fucking black nobility, all that kind of like usual suspects of evil. So yeah, hardcore pornography, it's so damaging. It's so damaging to your psyche. It makes you beta male. It robs you of your vitality. It gives your vitality to evil, dark, lower astral forces. Women sense it. Women really don't generally want men who are addicted to porn. Some women themselves have become addicted to porn. Porn really preys upon the fact of you either identify with the victim or the perpetrator if you've been sexually abused. I was abused. That's a big part of why I was addicted to porn. And I had to come to grips with the fact that I was transferring my trauma into watching men really demean women. And yeah, I know men get beat up by women too in porn, and there's every kind of kink and blah, blah, whatever out there. But as a general rule, women are really abused. The only people who are more abused than women in the porn industry are gay men. Gay men are way more abused in the gay porn industry. So I've been told from gay friends of mine that it's even more bleak and horrible than what happens to the women. And tons of those women are trafficked. It's like, yeah, it's the difference between eating the cheapest possible McDonald's burger, right? That's hardcore pornography, versus if you go and you have loving, connected sex with a woman, that's a filet mignon, that's organic and grass-fed beef, right? Kobe beef. right? So one, it makes you think you're getting what you need, but it's actually poisoning you. And the other one is very nutritious and delicious. And sorry to any vegans out there, but whatever. Like, I just can't navigate the landmines of everything out there. Peace, Scott. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. Much love. Jedio Aliak said, good times. All right. Well, amazingly, I have come to the end of the questions. Does anyone else have any Q&As? Please fire them up. It's open right now. If I don't get some more questions here in the next 10 or 15 minutes, I'm probably going to call it a wrap for the day. Just some stuff on the horizon for channel. I guess I'll do a little filler here. David Van Dorn, if you're out there, buddy, we need to do the electrical universe theory series. For the love of God, we've been talking about this for months. Let's see, who else am I going to have on the channel? I feel like Sam Tripoli said he'd come on the channel. I got to get a hold of him, though. He's exceedingly difficult to get a hold of. He gave me his email, but it seemed like a pretty generic email, so I don't know. And I already emailed him, and he didn't write back. So if anyone has Sam's ear and would like to see Sam on my show to talk about the way laughter is a super potent spiritual weapon against the Malachians, please, or comment on Sam's things to go on my channel, whatever. I'm going to make that episode about Sam and about his journey and about the importance spiritually of laughter and the way that it correlates with what the three chalices of the virtues. There's the chalice of tears. These are the healing chalices, the chalice of tears, the chalice of laughter, and the chalice of joy. Tears are your bringing up really deep emotion and transmuting it. And often it's what most people need to do. I had to do it for years. The chalice of laughter is taking stuck energy and transmuting it with a much higher vibration. And it transmutes energy. That's why it feels so good and such a release, almost like sometimes like you farted or took a shit or something, the level of release and pressure going away that you feel, and just how you could have been really sad before, but then you have a good hearty laugh and suddenly your mood is completely shifted because someone said something really funny and you're really depressed. A lot of comedians themselves who are really good are really depressed. And that's part of the reason they're good at comedies, because they want to recapture that feeling, right? I know that was the case for me. Believe it or not, I used to be funny at one point in time. I've actually done stand-up. I might put that video up at some point. My little shitty one time of going up and doing stand-up in Portland about 15 years ago, something like that. Anyways, I have huge respect for stand-up comedians. I think they have the hardest job in the world in some ways. I think it takes giant balls. I think it takes incredible intellect. I think it takes just real brilliance in observation and repackaging of familiar things in a new way. I mean, it's an incredible art. I think people don't give it nearly enough credit. I think it's by far the hardest performance thing in terms of, I don't mean performance like, triathlon, but I mean, sort of like the live arts, like, theater or movies even, or television, like of anything where there's acting, because comedy's acting sort of, it's like a very specific niche of acting. So to speak, because you're getting up there and you have a persona and you're just kind of saying stuff that's like, you might say it in regular life, but it's scripted to a certain sense. So it kind of falls under that general umbrella. It's far and away the hardest one. And pretty much all actors say that drama's easy, comedy is extremely hard because it requires timing, all that stuff, nuance. And so Sam's one of the few people who's a comedian who stayed true to it. He stayed true to seeking truth. Sam and I don't always agree on everything. We don't have to. He's sincere and he's seeking truth. That's what matters. He's on the side of the good people and he's helping people laugh, which is transmuting that energy. And when you've transmuted the energy, then you can experience that energy that's been transmuted back to its original state. And that is the chalice of joy. So, if anyone has Sam's ear, I'm going to send them more emails, of course, but that would be awesome. All right. So I got some more. Whoa, suddenly tons, Relic one with a porn-related joke. BBC, big black nobility conspiracy theories. I guess the N and T are silent here. But the black nobility does control the actual BBC. Actually, it probably controls both forms of BBC because porn is completely controlled by the mafia and the Khazarian mafia and the Italian mafia. 90% of it or whatever. Going to my first QHHT session next week. Anything I should bring up? Wow. Okay. So I had this done. A friend of mine, I actually plan to have her on my show at some point. She's very young, but she's incredibly talented. She can hear the angels. She does QHHT. I forget what it stands for, quantum something, but it's basically a past life regression. I wouldn't say I was skeptical, but I wasn't like, I didn't know what to expect, and I've had a lot of mystical experiences. I'm very psychic. So it's generally speaking kind of hard to impress me with that sort of realm, just because of the waters I swim in and have swum in for a long time, being apprenticed to a literal Siberian and Alaskan. He was half Inuit, half Chumkatka, whatever it is, the extreme northeastern slope of Russia up in Siberia. The people who make totem poles on basically both sides of the Pacific. And he came directly from the line. So I apprenticed to him. So, I mean, I've been involved in the esoteric, occult, and psychic realm for a long, long time. And I've gone pretty deep on. I mean, there's people who blow me away. Okay. So I'm not like the world's even close to the world's premier expert. I happen to be, it seems, world-class in terms of my psychic ability. But there's people who have far more knowledge than me and have applied themselves for a longer period of time and have gone much deeper. And so, while compared to the average person, it's extraordinary. In my field, there's people, there's mystics up in the Tibetan plateau who make me look like I'm finger painting and they're doing Rembrandt. Okay, so I just want to be clear about that. That said, compared to most people, I'm doing the Rembrandt and they're doing the finger painting in terms of psychic, mystical experiences. But Juliana, my friend Juliana, beautiful, beautiful soul for starters. And I will have her on the show. I meant to have her on long, long ago, but I messed up the interview. And so I need to give her another shot. She did that for me. And it was absolutely mind-blowing. But it was funny. They didn't answer any of the questions I wanted, but they gave me tons of super powerful, super interesting experiences. I had multiple experiences that were over 25,000 years or older. One of them was 50,000 years. I had a memory of being one of those little hobbit people, the Homo sapiens florensis. The little people are 2.5 to 3 feet tall that they found in like the Isle of Java and elsewhere. I had a memory of being one of those, and I saw a Nummo pop up out of the water, the great creator kind of fish ichthyoid alien species that probably seeded life on Earth billions of years, maybe even before the Anunnaki. And they had apparently, I guess, come to check up on us around 50,000 BC-ish or older. I don't know. That's when those beings died out. But I had an incredibly powerful, unbelievably vivid experience of being one of these little hobbit people. I had a beautiful wife. She was pregnant. We didn't speak. We communicated telepathically. I just was in this state of constant joy and presence. And I was going around and like collecting shellfish and stabbing spear fishing and stuff. And I was by the ocean. Then up out of the ocean, I was filled with like dread and awe, and I was frozen. And up out of the ocean came this, what looked like a fish person, right? It looked like sort of like us, but it was ichthyoid, right? Like it had limbs. And that's apparently because of the morphogenic field. Once a 5-limbed, a head plus 4-limbed creature appeared somewhere in the universe tends to repeat patterns that work, much like the crab phenomenon with, I forget what it's called, whatever it is, where things keep evolving into crab shape. The morphogenic field, the field of creation in the universe, once a shape comes out and is established as successful, then it tends to replicate itself, right? So like things like fins in both mammals and fish, things like that. There's just certain designs really work. So anyways, this fish-looking being comes up, but what's weird is it was covered in this like jellyfish-looking suit. And I think it was like psychic phenomenon or something. And I was like, I couldn't understand what I was seeing, and I was frozen. And it came up and it filled me. It felt loving but terrifying because it was just so much more powerful than me. And it came up and I had this like almost jellyfish octopus luminous thing around it, and it was grabbing stuff with its tentacles. And then it turned and looked at me, and then my mind went blank. And then that particular stage of the past life like ended. And there was other things that happened in it, like I have to be careful talking about some of my past lives just in case bad people are watching. Of course, they probably already know, but let's just say I had a past life where a piece of information came through that I was able to verify in the historical record, and it absolutely blew my mind. So QHHT, yes. And if you're able to do it with my friend Juliana, who I'm going to have on the show, not you, Brett, please work with the provider you're working with, but other people, I'm going to have Juliana on the show. I can vouch for her. Absolutely mind-blowing. She didn't develop it. She's just a practitioner, but she's incredibly psychic and mystically gifted. So enjoy, Brett. That could be a real game changer for you. It was one of the most mind-blowing, incredible, intense mystical experiences of my entire life. And again, I'm not easily impressed, but boy, did that do it for me. It might have been because it's Juliana, and her and I have past life connections as well. So that could have been part of it. All right, Scoons, quick opinion on Ahriman and Steiner. Yeah, love Steiner, big fan. My work is similar in some ways to Steiner. I feel a certain kinship with Steiner. I think almost everything he did was pure gold. I've been told by the angels that he and Sri Yukteswar were intentionally given incorrect information on the yugas. I realize that's a gigantic claim, but I think it bears out in terms of what happened historically based on what they were saying versus what has actually unfolded. I think it's hard to say that the 20th century was some kind of big step up when it had so much massacre and genocide that it put the 1800s to shame. I just don't buy Sri Yukteswar saying 1700. Come on, most of the rape in the New World happened after that, or a lot of it anyways. I don't agree with Steiner that the 20th century marked the beginning of the Dwarpa Yuga. I just don't agree. It doesn't feel intuitively true. And I'm going to have a Bibu Dev Misra on to talk about that. Ahriman, yes, I think the Ahrimanic force is a description in a way of an aspect of what I term Moloch, but I think it's actually maybe separate. I think it's just the materializing aspect of the universe. I mean, Steiner even describes it that way, that it's the universe wants to experience things in concrete terms, and so it's a physical and manifesting force that moves in opposition to the spiritualizing force of, interestingly enough, Lucifer is a spiritualizing force in the Steiner model. So is Jesus, right? Steiner being a Christian mystic. And then the Antichrist is another kind of component. He makes a cross on it. You have Ahriman on one side, you have Lucifer on the other, you have the Antichrist at the bottom of the cross, and at the top of the cross you have the true light, Jesus. So similar conception to the Luciferian Malachian Most High dynamic, but it is different. There's a lot of differences in terms of like mine is linked to the Yuga system. Mine says that Lucifer rules the Bronze and Silver Ages. That's what the angels have told me, that the Most High rules the Golden Age and that Moloch rules the Kali Yugas. I think there's a tremendous amount of value, and I would never, ever, ever say, I realize I just said I know something that Steiner didn't, and that sounds super egotistical, and please take it or leave it. I believe Bibu Dev Misra has done correct work. And I was told by the angels that through no fault of their art, Yukteswar and Steiner were told the wrong dates for the end of the Kali Yuga, because had they told the correct date, it would have robbed humanity of certain spiritual experiences, and that it was important to the collective evolution of humanity to have that wrong date. Could I be being fed the wrong date for a similar reason? Sure. I guess we'll see. It's not too long off now. I mean, if big things don't happen by March, the end of March 2025, right? Spring equinox 2025 is sort of when the angels have refined it to. If we don't start seeing mega changes by then, well, I will certainly cop to it, but we'll see what happens. Is his incarnation coming here? Not a thing. Thanks. Yeah, talking about the Ahrimanic manifestation. Yeah, so, another similar belief is this idea that the planetary gods incarnate periodically. And I am very open to that there may be a Saturn avatar, and that if there's a Saturn avatar, there's almost certainly a Jupiter. There's probably an avatar for most of the planets right now on Earth who is incarnated. The planets will also act through people on a temporary basis, like Joan of Arc was almost certainly a Mars avatar. Hitler was almost certainly a Mars avatar, a temporary one, not a born one. The ones I'm talking about now that I believe walk upon the earth now are born. They're born and incarnated. Sometimes the lower aspect of Saturn is the Antichrist figure, right? Those two are interlinked. So Stalin and Hitler were temporary Mars for Hitler and Saturn for Stalin, right? And communism is like sort of the crystallization of such lower Saturn Malachian political ideology, especially Frankfurt School, where a tiny elite dominate everything. You own nothing, blah, 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 the Klaus Schwab bullshit. Any chance of getting Joseph Farrell on? Well, you tell me, man. I love Dr. Joseph Farrell. I was a longtime patron, and I sent him 5, 6, 7, 8 emails, no response. And yet he was responding to other people. He loved my questions. He really liked the questions I would answer him. I'm about to have an influx of capital, let's put it that way, here soon. And when I do, I'm going to become a paid patron again, and I will ask him on my show. I am the biggest fan of Dr. Joseph Farrell. It's impossible to overstate what incredibly high esteem I hold him in. I think he is the greatest. He's the GOAT truther as far as I know. I don't know anybody better. I don't agree with 100% of what Dr. Farrell says, of course, just like I don't expect any of my fans or whatever to agree with 100% of what I say. I always say to people, take what resonates and leave the rest. And if 10% resonates, great. That's 10% valuable information. Sorry about the 90% you don't agree with. If 90% resonates, that's fantastic. And I think we're kind of attracted towards that, which we resonate with more rather than less. And for me, Dr. Joseph Farrell is just superb, genius, polymath, fantastic. Anyone who's watching this, if you don't know who Dr. Joseph Farrell is, please start learning, because he is a national treasure here in the United States. Straight up, I love the man. Brilliant human being, and I would love to have him on the show. Do you have any good information on Ormus monatomic gold? I find it hard to find good info. Yeah, there's something definitely to that. Tim Hogan, who had my channel, opined that monatomic gold plus arcs are relevant in the arc technology, which seems to be electrical in nature. Some people say that the Great Pyramid ran on a arc. There's the Ark of the Covenant, right, which was an Egyptian ark, Atlantean tech, right, that then were placed within it the tablets that Moses brought down. And so a lot of people think that it's because the tablets are in there, but there's another school of thought that these arcs and that arc technology, ARK, right, not talking about Noah's Ark, talking about like the Ark of the Covenant. Those boxes that were carried are an ancient form of electrical technology. They're an electrical generator of some sort. And there's lots of stuff about the Great Pyramid being piezoelectric. Those big sarcophagus in Saqqara, I think it is, were probably some kind of energy generator, and that they actually used weirdly rotting bull corpses were key to making the electrical component work. You're going to have to look that up yourself, that piece. But Tim Hogan says that monatomic gold, powdered monatomic gold inside the arcs was critical to creating this electrical effect and possibly even opening stargates, which are some sort of interdimensional travel, teleportation type thing. So check out my interview with Tim Hogan. The second one in particular, we go over the arc technology. So that would be my answer there. Heck yeah. Well, heck yeah, Ghost Fella. What a conversation that would be to have Joseph Farrell on. Oh, I can't even tell you. He's my number one person I've wanted to have on the show for the entirety of the show. Man, I would love to have Dr. Joseph Farrell on. If anyone has a channel to Dr. Joseph Farrell, a method of getting a hold of him, please tell him White Lotus of Light. He knows who I am. Would love to have him on a show. He wagged his finger at me. And one thing I know about Dr. Farrell is he's very politeness and reason oriented. He gets frustrated with things he views are anti-reason. I agree with him. Sometimes he gets a little heavy-handed with some of his personal religious beliefs bleed into the rest of what he does, and that's where he and I part ways to some degree. But he really has no time for people who are rude or who don't follow a process that he feels to be correct. And in this case, I asked him on the live chat if he'd come on my channel. He said, "Yeah, I will, but you have to go through the formal channels and do it." And then I did it like 7 or 8 times and just no dice. So if anyone knows how to get a hold of Dr. Joseph Farrell and to suggest him coming on this channel, I would be forever grateful. Kiki M. Sam says he has a sex addiction. Sammy is great. Well, I mean, I have an incredibly high sex drive, and I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's anything wrong, and even the angels seem to generally agree with this. Sexuality isn't their issue. free will, protection of free will and lack of coercion in sexuality is, and also debasement in sexuality. So a lot of like the darker sex stuff that people are into, or like mixing defecation and sex, for example, right? Stuff like that seems to be where the angels really don't like it, and they're against pornography, even higher than prostitution itself, because it's both prostitution plus it has that. They're really into empowering the divine masculine and really into empowering the divine feminine, and pornography attacks both of those. But especially, from the point of view of a male, it puts you in a beta male position rather than being strong and masculine. And the angels want men to be divine masculine and strong and assertive and forceful and protectors and providers and protecting the innocent above all else at the cost of your own life. That is your duty as a male. And for women, they have all the divine feminine qualities, the receptiveness, the wisdom, the healing, the yin to the yang. The universe operates on the divine masculine, divine feminine. So there's nothing wrong with sex or sexuality. A lot of us do have damage and trauma around our sexuality. And so some ways in which we interact with one another in sex, even in a consensual situation, can be harmful to one or both of us and re-triggering our traumas. And so that's something to be aware of. But pornography and prostitution, right, which includes all sex work, not condemning the sex workers, but rather the Johns who go to it, and not even condemning them, but just simply saying you need to heal that. I believe that men and women, both who are in sex work, have probably to some degree been kind of forced into that, or they were sort of taking the easy road to monetize something. And I think it's unfortunate, but I don't castigate any sex workers. I want to be utterly clear about that. I actually think that we really need to love them and help them if at all possible. I don't know the answer to legalization of prostitution versus keeping it illegal. Both have very severe problems, and human trafficking is, something that has to be solved. I just don't know. It's a tricky thing, but one thing we can't do is demonize either the Johns or the prostitutes. Either one, because they're almost both certainly coming from some form of sexual trauma or some other trauma that's made them diminish themselves. I really think the answer would be to bring back sacred sex in the temples, the way it used to be, like so-called temple prostitution, which wasn't prostitution at all, but where there's a service offered somehow in a sacred container for people who otherwise wouldn't get access to sex, like unattractive men, right? To be able to have that in their life and have healing around that. So, yeah. Let's see. Mahalo Pathala says, how do you understand Hindu gods as related to angels, demons, or something else entirely? They are deities. So they're spirits, right, of various kinds. Like there's elementals, there's the Fae, who are actually they're an alternate evolutionary path of humans going back very, very, very far, who were highly magical culture dedicated to protecting the environment. And they, in order to escape persecution, moved themselves beyond the veil, and they became the Fae, and they're now no longer human because they live in this other dimension beyond the silvery veil. There are devas, right, which are the Hindu version of angels. That's their name for angels. There's Rakshasa, and other in the demonic pantheon. There's also something that look like, if you play Dungeons & Dragons, mind flayers that are an existent demon in Hindu mythology, that are like cephaloid in nature. So there's demons, right? There's nature spirits of various kinds. There's asuras, there's devas, there's all kinds of different classifications of spirits, but sort of beyond the general classification of spirits of various strengths, of which the most powerful are the highest order angels and the lowest order qliphothic spirits or demonic lower astral spirits, right? But there's a whole classification of spirits, dwarves and gnomes and elves and dragons and all this kind of stuff which are certain kinds of like naturally occurring spirits. But all those kind of fall under one umbrella of spirits of varying degrees of power. And the most powerful of those spirits, like, right, the seraphim or the lowest qliphothic spirits, they're very close in power to the next category, which is humans who have attained a super high level become demigods. An example is Kuan Yin as a demigod, the great Buddhist woman who did exist and was a historical figure. She has become a demigod. She has a certain amount of people who borderline worship her, invoke her all the time, and she achieved a very high level. And she's, according to my personal gnosis, take it or leave it, she's in the process of becoming an earthbound deity. That's then the next classification. There's many earthbound deities. Many, but not all of the Hindu gods fall under that. Basically, the entire Norse pantheon falls under that. The entire, I'm not certain. There might be some non-earthbound Egyptian deities, but that pantheon falls under it. Then there are earth-related deities that are earthbound in a certain sense, but they're kind of in a different category, and that's the planetary deities. The planetary deities trump the earthbound deities, or very often the earthbound deities are an aspect of that planetary deity. And so, like, the Roman and Greek pantheons are kind of unusual because the majority of that are actually planetary deities. And the Hindus also have the planetary deities. The planetary deities are incredibly powerful, and they're in charge of the karmic unfoldment here on Earth. And their position in the sky is your karmic map, Vedic astrology, right? Vedic astrologer here. And so, yeah, then there's the planetary deities. Then there's another classification, which are deities that have moved outside of our solar system and are within, are able to be in the consciousness of sentient beings on multiple planets at once. And many of the Hindu deities, interestingly, which points to me a non-Earth origin for some of the Hindu pantheon, are apparently interstellar deities. Ganesha and Shiva, I can attest to with certainty, are interstellar deities, as in Ganesha and Shiva, though their conception might be different based on the planet you're on, the symbolic conception of them and the mind might be different. Their general purpose and what they oversee is the same on other planets. So Ganesha would be a remover of obstacles if you're on Antares, or you're an Arcturian, or you're a Pleiadian. It may be that, I don't know that those particular star systems worship Ganesha, but if they did, he might not be an elephant-headed deity, right? Because that's a Hindu symbolic manifestation of this energy, this intelligence of this deity, and that deity is a remover of obstacles, among other things. And so he might do that. He might also teach their version of the planetary gods within their solar system, because he's also the god of Vedic astrology. He might teach how karmas ripen based on that particular solar system. Shiva is also off the planet, and so is Lucifer. It's very interesting. The Most High and Moloch are both bound to the earth, and they're the most powerful deities bound to the earth. They dominate over even the planetary deities during their reign. Moloch dominates supreme on earth right now. His time is rapidly coming to an end, but he trumps any and all other deities. All of them standing against him cannot defeat him during the Kali Yugas. But at the end of Kali Yugas, all earthbound deities, all spirits, even most of the qliphothic spirits, because Moloch always at the end of the Kali Yuga tries to take the ball and go home. He says, well, if I can't dominate humans, I'll just wipe them out. He always tries to kill all of us at the end of the Kali Yuga, apparently. Sort of taking the ball and going home and being a petulant about being removed from power and wanting to burn it all down. And that's the big thing that the Luciferians are struggling with. They want to take over the planet, but they don't want to have it reduced to a cinder, because the Malachians would gladly just kill everyone. They want to have a vibrant planetary civilization going, and they have to very meticulously pull up the fingers of the Malachians off their grip off the steering wheel of the planet, so to speak, one finger at a time, in order to then get their hands on the steering wheel, and that there's actually a car still existing, and that the Malachians haven't driven us off the cliff. So the planetary deities are very important, but the deities of our planet trump the mega deities of our planet, which is Moloch, Lucifer, and the Most High. They dominate over those deities, other than they generally don't, or actually I think are outright prevented from messing with certain karmas. Lesser planetary deities weirdly seem to have more latitude in their ability to mess with people's karmas, but they have to then take on your karma, which they're basically never willing to do. So certain amounts of karma are just fixed and will not change for most people. Oops, let's see here. All right, folks, I need to go in about 11 minutes tops, so I'm going to try and get through these. Dangers of FE depends a lot on prevailing consciousness. To use it peacefully, Moloch seem to do everything to aggress us, so we'll never be ready for it. Yeah, not answering flat Earth questions, sorry, said. Sorry, I'm late, my friend. Are we watching the replay? No problem. Look Within. By the way, I did a interview on Look Within's channel a while ago. Look Within's a great guy. I'm blanking on your name, brother. I honestly, is it David? I don't know. I can't remember what his name is, but great guy, great channel, pretty good interview. So look that up. You can just look up Ian Ferguson, Look Within podcast. Please give him a like, give him a follow, get his channel rolling. You know, it would really help a lot. So, oops, let's see. What did he say? I feel his sincerity. It shows how Joe put him down, that he's a controlled op. I'm not sure who man, I wish I knew what you're talking about there, brother. Just realized he used the same abbreviation for two separate things. Sorry, no worries. Thanks, dude. I'm driving myself crazy. I think I have questions. I need to be where you are, so I'm hoping this pops my I'm not sure. Maybe I think that was in relation to porn up above, maybe? Or no, the QHHT. Oh, yeah. Enjoy, man. It's awesome. It did unlock a lot for me. The only thing I don't like about Sam Tripoli is Brian Callen. They wanted to turn him on. Not sure what that means. Or maybe that might be the show where Sam suddenly he went on and that guy was really ramming down his throat, flat Earth, throughout the entire interview. And then after that, Sam seemed to be more open to flat Earth, whereas before he had been sort of opposed to it. Not sure. So bad. Sam probably kept from getting turned on, LOL. Yeah, I mean, Sam seems to be open to it, but also not embracing it based on that interview. I was very afraid that Johnny Woodward was going to tank the interview by getting us fighting about flat Earth, which I really don't want. And that's exactly the point of the flat Earth psyops, is to create infighting and get people to not listen to their own senses, the same way that we don't think a boy is a boy because he has a ding dong. Come on now. Are there leprechauns? Yep. Absolutely. Leprechauns are a classification of Earth elemental. That's deep, man. Probably talking about the deities thing. Yeah. I just feel incredibly blessed on so many fronts, guys. Like, just some great things are happening, and just do not forget there are forces other than the will of evil at work in the world, and they're way more powerful than people think. But they had to be the Most High faction. Call back to the Steiner question earlier. Steiner claimed that about 100-something years ago that the good secret societies lost some kind of big fight behind the scenes, and according to natural law, they had to go into hiding for 100 years. So the Most High factions had to basically let the world be completely run roughshod over by the Malachian and Luciferians for 100 years before they could reemerge. And so the good guys have been both not activated. Like, one of these people that I worked with was an atheist, and then he had a breakthrough and became very spiritualized. And he's now, like, he's in the game, and he's working on behalf of the Most High, and he absolutely was not before that. He was an atheist. So that's just one example. But people are getting activated all over the place, right? Like sleeper cells. And the angels are like, ding, activating them. And all of a sudden people are like coming online for the Most High. But they couldn't before, because the Most High, or the Malachians, they can always sniff out Most High people, and they hate them, and they try and wipe them out every chance they have. Most High's core principle above all else is protect the innocent. And the Malachians' core principle above all else is destroy innocence. It's required for Moloch to touch the world, hence the Epstein bullshit. So, yeah. So Jess S. says, are you familiar with Flower A. Newhouse? If so, what do you think of her interpretation of speaking and her teachings about the angels? Unfortunately, Jess, and nice to see you again, I am not familiar with Flower A. Newhouse, and I might try, but honestly, my free time is super, super limited nowadays, guys. Like, between stuff that's going on in my family, and some professional opportunities that I'm being afforded. You know, I do a lot of connecting with people behind the scenes, I guess is the best way of putting it. It's starting to happen at a very high level. It's straight up the grace of the Most High, no doubt about it. They told me this would be happening, and I will admit I did not believe them, but now it is, and so I'm just like, wow. So, oh, good, it's Patrick, and thank you, Patrick. Oh, I'm so sorry. So, Look Within's channel. Homeboy's name is Patrick. I apologize, Patrick, for forgetting your name. My bad. I'm just bad with names. Check out his channel. I had an interview with him. Great stuff. It's a brand new launch for channel. Please go and give him a like and a sub and make a comment on the video where you watch me. You know, maybe throw Sam Tripoli's name in there. It might help the algorithm. Anyways, yeah, check out Look Within. It's a new channel launching. Is one of these people I'm talking about getting activated, right? And we need to encourage and help people who are activating, right? Who are working on these things. Joe Rogan, when Sam was okay with him earlier this year. Wait, what? Joe Rogan, when Sam was okay with him earlier this year, was on with him earlier this year. What about Joe Rogan? By the way, I see Joe Rogan as possibly even a knowing Luciferian, which doesn't make him, I mean, he's a short-term enemy. He's at least in that vibration of consciousness, right? I mean, he was an MMA guy fighting, right? That I myself rest often in that sort of like upper edge of Luciferianism. That's part of the Venn diagram where the Most High is sort of in between. And then I either spike down if I'm upset or spike up if I'm in a more peaceful place. And so I'm not talking about it. But I see Joe as more like in the center of the Luciferian, along with Zuby, and then Elon Musk and Trump, especially. Trump I see more as in that part of the Venn diagram where the Malachians and the Luciferians overlap. And then he's a bit in the higher end of Luciferianism. But that's why so many people get duped by Trump in particular, is because that he does to some extent have that Malachian energy, even though he's pretty clearly a grand Heyoka heralding the end of the Kali Yuga and the beginning of the next age, in my opinion. Let's see here. Are you familiar with Flurbrun on YouTube? Any idea of Betelgeuse star? Yeah, boy, that's disconcerting that Betelgeuse might be blowing up and there'll be a supernova. It's disconcerting because it seems that Orion is where the gods, the redhead giants who seem to like kind of maybe help steer human evolution, especially near the last Bronze Age. And even some of them survived into more recent times. And like, look up Freddie Silva's work on, I think it's called The Drowned Lands. Let me see, I got his book. The Missing Lands. Yeah, highly recommend this. He talks about especially the giants throughout the South Pacific in particular, where there's stories of redheads, and even on certain islands you find people who have red hair who were there before the Polynesian people, before like the Tongans and the big Kahuna culture that spread across the Pacific. It seems that these red-haired people were there even before that, including in New Zealand and elsewhere. And this is a very suppressed thing, and it gets into race and all this kind of stuff. And so it's a hot potato, right? There's some really good stuff out there on the on this. But anyways, those people seem to have come from Orion or interact with Orion. The pyramids seem to be built based on Orion's belt, right? I just wonder what it means for planetary consciousness. It's been there for all of human history. What does it mean? What's going to happen if Betelgeuse went supernova and the energy comes here? I have to assume it's a positive and good thing. It probably means that we're going to level up in some kind of mega way. I just don't know. It just makes me a little sad as an astrologer, and the importance of Orion and Orion's belt. The constellation and just how it's been with us for so long. And then also it makes me sad if maybe those red-haired giants who came here, who I might even have their blood since I have red hair, just makes me sad that maybe maybe that's why they came here, right? Because we're just seeing it now, but if they had faster than light travel, perhaps they fled Betelgeuse exploding and came here. And from our point of view, came here thousands and thousands of years ago, long before the supernova went off. And from their point of view, they fled the supernova and came right here. I wonder about that, actually. So great question. Look within. I'm about to end things, by the way, folks. I feel the demon I thought I saw was actually an angel waking me up. I denied all existence of them before that. Interesting. There is such a thing as being activated by the forces of darkness. That's literally what happened to me. I was activated by a manifestation of the dark feminine, my ex. She really turned me on to magic. She was astonished with my natural abilities. I actually am coming around on the idea that I perfected my solar body so I could access past life memories as a magician. But then probably in one of my Knights Templar incarnations, which are hidden from me, I was burned at the stake. And when you're burned at the stake or drowned or have other severe upset, you can it can cause you to not be able to recall, even with the perfected solar body, which allows you to remember past incarnations and bring forward skills. It's something you find in the Western magical tradition. If you want to hear more about it, Damien Eccles. I'm not going to get into the controversy around Damien Eccles. I'm just not going to do it. But anyways, Damien Eccles was interviewed on the Midnight. What is it called? Midnight something or other. It's on Netflix. Midnight. What is it called? No, not Midnight Mass. Midnight Club. No. I don't know. There's some weird show. That was like Midnight something or other. And in it, the guy does a podcast. It's the guy who did Adventure Time, I think. And it's animated, and he does a podcast, and it's all weird and virtual reality and like aliens and stuff. I don't know. It's very strange. But in it, he interviews people, and in one of them, he interviews Damien Eccles, and Damien Eccles explains the perfection of the solar body, which is what I'm referencing here. And so I seem to be activated by the dark feminine, which weirdly allowed me to start to access some of these past lives. Like, she couldn't believe she was trained by an absolute master magician, a dark magician, but trained by a world famous dark magician who had an absolute mastery of magic. And she would start to show me something, and I would just intuitively know how to do it again and again and again. And like, her jaw was on her chest. She couldn't believe it. And she herself was, oh, I wish her well. I don't want her in my life ever again, but I do wish her well, and I feel sad. I just feel sad for her. She had a very, very, very hard childhood, and I have love for her soul, who suffers so much. But she was astonished by my channeling ability, by just a lot of my psychic gifts. She's incredibly psychic, incredibly gifted magician. It's just too bad that her trauma forced her to have a more selfish point of view, and that's why she works with dark energies. Anyway, she activated me. She was the one who helped me to really get in touch with my light side. And the angels told me that divine masculine is almost always activated in some way or another by the dark feminine, and divine feminine is almost always activated in some way or another by the dark masculine. That energy hits us really, really hard, and it forces us because it brings out the opposite in us. We have this impactful, the dark feminine hits you really hard. I recognized I was dominated by the dark feminine. I freed myself from the dark feminine, and I activated my divine masculine. So you can be activated by forces of darkness. Indeed, the trauma that happened to me as a child activated me psychically. Yeah, I don't want to touch that anymore. Okay, let's see here. Will Big Mike run in 24? God, I hope not. I've heard lots of rumblings about that. That's kind of a worst case scenario. I think they're going down, though, or I know they're going down eventually. Have the angels taught you about the rainbow body cultivation, as it's called in Tibet, turning the body into light? A little bit. They don't use that verbiage, but yes, to some degree. Tibet is an incredible storehouse in Nepal, the entire Tibetan plateau. It's where it seems to be where the like ultimate emanation of spirituality on the planet is, in a lot of ways, the highest level, the non-dual stuff, where you're recognizing that neither good nor evil is what God is. God is both and nothing. Ultimate big G God, not the Most High here. Most High being the positive aspect of the ultimate creator God. It's the harmonious aspect. But of course, you have to have chaos along with harmony in order to make the universe move. That's why there's Moloch and the Most High. And there's not just the Most High. You have to have those opposing forces, you know, the masculine and feminine, light and dark, all that kind of stuff. And so the the emanation from the Tibetan Plateau is the ultimate one of non-duality. And I think the Tibetan Plateau is probably the crown chakra of the planet. It's the highest place. It's incredibly filled with spirits of all kinds. It's an incredibly important place on Earth. Yeah, it's the Midnight Gospel. Thank you. Midnight Gospel on Netflix. A lot of them, I don't know. I have mixed thoughts about it. Some of the animation is very weird, bordering on disturbing, and makes me wonder. Right? I think the animator maybe had their own agenda. That's very common for animators or people who do production of music videos. Might have an agenda that's different from the person who hired them to do it. And because those people maybe don't understand occult stuff enough, they don't see it. That said, that guy does seem to understand occult stuff, so I don't know. He seems fine, other than the fact that he interrupts his guests more than I do on that show. So anyways, I have gone over here, folks. One last thing, Dave G. Miner, not sure how to say your last name, G. Miner. Thank you so much for the super sticker, and thank you so much for everyone for tuning in. I'm going to have some new content up next week. I'm not sure whether I'm going to be able to get some interviews lined up before then, or whether I'm just going to do another live cast. And don't forget, opening up angelic magic classes, probably starting not this coming Thursday, but probably they'll almost certainly start Thursday, the 6th of July, I think is probably when I'm going to start it. So if you're interested in angelic magic classes, you can go to my website, drop me an email, and I can get you on the list. I'm going to do one for Oceania and Asia, which will actually, that one would take place technically from my point of view on Wednesday the 5th. But from your point of view, if you're in Oceania or Asia, across the international date line, it would for you be on Thursday the 6th still. Just for me, I would be teaching you on the 6th, and there's a reason for it. You have to start the ritual on a Thursday, end it on not the Sunday just after, but a Sunday 11 days later. The number of days matters. The planetary energies matter. The Most High is a culmination of Jupiter, the higher aspect of Jupiter, and the higher aspect of the Sun. So, yeah, that's that. And then Josh said, thank you so much. Thank you, all you viewers. Much love. And remember, and I got to remind myself about this, no matter where we part in beliefs, like if we're truly interested in the betterment of mankind, we should focus on that. And just ask yourself if any of our beliefs are hindering us from bringing greater harmony and love and compassion and wisdom in. And I have to admit, I want to be honest here, my dislike of the flat earth theory causes me to get very angry sometimes at flat earthers who are very insistent. And it's an example of where I myself need to get better. Okay, so I just want to show that I too can be aware that I have flaws, and that I should be more respectful and kind when I interact with people who believe in flat earth. It's not the people that bother me, it's the theory and the agenda behind it, Tavistock. So last one I'm going to throw up is Jess S. said, thanks for the chat. Ian, I might sign up for one of your angel classes. I think that would be great, Jess. I think you would find that it is very transformative for your life. And so I'm just going to end on that note. Much love, everyone, and catch you next time.